Hello everyone. I hope you're doing well in your current circumstances and that you have great plans for its improvement. I'm Miss Sherman. Welcome to Homemaking Radio. I'm broadcasting from the front room, the living room of the manse today, and I have a few things to tell you. I've been told by more than one person that they listen to me at night to help them sleep. Well, at least I'm useful in some way, and I hope that some of you benefit from it in other ways, maybe get some ideas. You can all research everything that I have said for yourself. It's all out there, it's all available. I'm a veteran homeschooler, and I've been a preacher's wife for 50 years. I also like to share new learning experiences with you, and having been in the position I have been in for so long, I've made some observations about people. And I know you're going to scroll to the 45-minute section and start listening to the entertaining part, which is about the way people act sometimes and what I have observed. It's not always what the mainstream would say, but it's just my own experience. And so while I'm at it, I'll just tell you, this is not anything you need to worry about. My opinion is just for your entertainment while you get something done at home. It's for people who are at home and needs a little company. I listen to books online while I do things around the house and get myself motivated for doing things that are a little bit tedious. And I hope that you're not going to sit here and watch me, because there isn't anything to see today. I might show you a couple of things. And if you're new here, or even if you're old here, or you're vital, please go to the link in the description box on the channel on YouTube and click that, and then go to the page where the video will be shown along with the other things it goes with. I'm making this for my blog, and so I will have pictures that go with the things that I spoke of, and also might include a list of a summary or some saying or some poem that I quoted in there. And you're missing out a lot if you don't go to the page and listen, because you're just sitting there on the YouTube page distracted by everything on the side. And I think that it is a better and more pleasant atmosphere on the page in which I have embedded this. Now, I know maybe some of you are getting tired of being told to get ready for the day and to get dressed and to look your best. I was not able to do that first thing because we are in a heat wave right now, and we're also in harvest where there's tremendous amount of noise of all the harvesters and tractors, and I can't shut the door because I need the breeze. And also it's so hot in the morning that the coolest time is between 4 and 7. So I knew that if I didn't get out there and go on my nature walk and go outside and do a little gardening, I would not be able to do it. So I went out without getting really ready, just threw something on and an old apron, and didn't look my best. But I like what the lady said who left a comment about how she knew she had to get dressed up for the flowers, and that is, to me, very important. I was reading a description today of a garden, and it was written back in the 1700s, I guess, and it was some quote from somebody that was published, and I wonder if it would be possible for people today to describe the nature around which they walk. And so that's my challenge for you today. Write to a child, grandchild, friend, mother, and describe the nature that you observed from the ground to the sky, and describe it in a clear and lively way. There's a book you can get called Clear and Lively Writing, and I believe it's for homeschools. Clear and Lively Writing. I don't know who the author is, but you can do a search for that and get that for you. It's a little workbook, and it'll give you sentences and challenges on how to describe something, and give you a way to find different words for it. We used to use the thesaurus in the old days to find substitute words so that we wouldn't use the same descriptive word all the time. So now please go and do something about yourself and get dressed and get fresh and clean and smell good. I always think that bathing and dressing just gives you a beginning for your day, even if you're already having a bad day. And by afternoon, nothing has been accomplished. See, you hear that? It's one of those. That's one of those. Look, I can't keep track of the names of all these machines they have now with the tractors. They're gathering up the crop. They cut it last night, all night long. They don't like, of course, they like to work in the coolness too, so they cut it all night long. And now this morning they're gathering it, whatever it is. And so you're going to have to listen to it because I'm not going to close the door. And so what was I talking about? Well, I'm talking about getting dressed and getting ready and having a new beginning. Even if life just hasn't gone well, it's 1 or 2 in the afternoon or later, it's not too late. You could take a shower and start over. All will be well. And so I'm going to just go to my notes, as bad as they are, and see if I can make sense of them, and you can listen as you go. Now, the idea, of course, is to get your house in the kind of order you want it in and make it more pleasant to be home than to be anywhere else. Have you ever thought about that? I tell you, during the last 2 years in which the controllers and the powers that be were treating us out in the public, coming home was a relief, and that's the way we want it to always be. And I have wanted to come here a couple of times, but the noise outside has been so bad that even with the door closed, I couldn't have broadcast. So my goal is to be here more often, although what I can talk about is always a big challenge. And so I'll just talk about some of the events in my life right now. When my first grandchild was born, we knew he would be here a lot, and so we had a brand new carpet put in throughout the house. This was before the wood floors became more available, and all you could get was carpet. It was back in the day here in this area, and so that was 23 years ago, and so we just had a wall-to-wall carpet put in. Well, you're not supposed to keep carpets that long, and this carpet started to wear out and break down, and so we've had it all taken out except for one last room. For some reason, I think I ran out of wood. I ran out of the supplies to do it. And I finally got 2 of the older grandchildren, a 23-year-old and an 18-year-old, to come and take out that last, it was the guest room, that last piece of old carpet that had just, it had broken down so bad that it was sticking to the surface of the slab that it was laid on and the concrete. And so they had brought crowbars and pickaxes and everything, and they were busy. And I normally, when the grandsons come, I treat them like I did when they were babies, and I call them baby boy and I call them darling and honey, and ask them what they want to eat, and they just bask in it, and then we do things that we like to do that are leisurely, and they're on kind of a holiday. I was so shocked. They got in that room and they tore it up, they tore it apart, they pulled out, the 2 of them weren't wasting any time. They turned into this construction worker mode. I didn't even recognize them, and when they got into it, I thought it might not be a good idea. I thought better of it to call them sweet doll or honey boy or anything like I used to. They were intensely involved, and because the carpet was in such bad shape and smelled so bad, they had put gas masks on and were tearing this carpet up. And because I had pulled all the furniture out of that room and put it in the hallway, there was only enough room to squeeze by, but I was concerned that they would have passage to roll up the pieces of the old carpet and take that out the front door. And I kept sitting here watching, and it never came out. And finally went back there and looked, and they had just opened the window, knocked the screen out, and threw it out the window. That's smart. That saved steps. And they had a wagon sitting outside the window, which it landed in. Talk about smart. And they were wearing steel-toed boots, and I was so impressed that I've decided I'd like to have some too, if I can get them in my size, and would protect my feet a lot from things that drop on you in the home. Not often, but it's really good to have your feet protected. I think you'll notice that. And so they just turned into, their personality changed, and they were intensely cleaning this up, and they had woken up at 6 in the morning and got started, and I couldn't watch. They were cutting things and using little hacksaws on things, and I offered even to buy them an electric saw, and they didn't want to do that. They just wanted to get it done. They didn't want to go anywhere, and they weren't wearing protective gloves, and I couldn't watch. So I just closed the door to the sewing room, and I sewed some things for my daughter. I just couldn't watch, but the noise was tremendous, but they were intense, and I felt like it was walking into a construction worker site and asking what they wanted for breakfast. Probably wouldn't be too appropriate, and they probably would have stood up and not been able to adjust their thinking. But they did a beautiful job, and they got up in the morning and started, and then their goal was that one of them was going to sleep in the guest room that night, and they did it. They did it. So I am so happy, and after I finish talking to you, I've got to go and put everything away and put everything back. It's not show worthy yet, but it sure is nice to have a fresh floor, and I personally would have preferred to have improved a house that actually was the kind I wanted built for me, but in courtesy for anyone who stays there. I want them to have a nice, fresh, sanitary room, and it was very nice that they did that. And they said it was a contribution to my hospitality ministry. So here it was, just before he was born, put that old thing in. It wasn't old then, but then 23 years later, he's the one that takes it out. And then the 18-year-old had, when he was about 10, painted that room for me. I introduced him to the paint roller and the long pole that goes on it, and showed him how to do it. And he did an excellent job, and he was only 10 years old. And that is still on the wall. And I'm so sentimental, I didn't repaint over it because of the hard work he had gone to. So there they were, fixing up the room that was made for them many years ago. So that's just the only news I have around here. And so I hope that helped you get a few things done while you listen to it. And also I have been talking to you about being young and trying to tell the young women, young girls, this is for girls. Now, I could do a section on boys too, because I grew up in a family where there were 5 boys, and also I had boys of my own, more boys than girls. And I could do a little talk about being young if you're a boy. And I did describe some time ago about watching a school bus go past on this old farm road, and no one was looking out the window, and yet it is the most picturesque, beautiful part of the country area. And thinking at the time how nice it would be to be able to talk to some of them about being young, because from the time you're little and you get sent to an institution, a public school, where you're learning to focus on something with your eyes that is not life out there. It's an indoctrination that takes place, and pretty soon this is all you can think about, and you come home with vacant eyes, and you don't have the love of life that you could have. And if you have missed out because you have not been homeschooled, then this is a perfect thing to listen to because I'm going to homeschool you a little bit, and I wrote it all down, and I will read to you how to be young. And it has a lot to do with your home and the homemaking. And later on, we'll get to the difficult people part. But this is the fun part. This is the joyful part. So I'm going to read this to you, and it's called How to Be Young. So we've got ready, okay, and we have, you're all fresh and new and everything, and maybe some of you are just sitting there because you need to rest and listen a little bit. I wanted the music to work that one of my grandchildren had set up for me to play while I was broadcasting, but it wasn't working today because there might be some silent moments in which I am trying to figure out my notes here. Would it be nice to have some background music? But you know what? You can be a do-it-yourselfer, and you can hum a little tune. You can even make it up. That's a real do-it-yourselfer while you're waiting in between the noise that I'm making. So here is what I wrote, and I'm going to read it to you, How to Be Young. Now, if you have someone in your home, a young lady, it doesn't matter, 8 to 18, or even you, maybe you could benefit from this, because I'm going to tell you some things here that work from a primitive life to a more advanced life. It works for a young person to a vital person. It works in poverty or in prosperity. It works in hard times, and it works in happy times. So these are just basic things of life, which I think a lot of it is, they try to describe it a lot in this book, Cottage Core. And also I will read to you the weather book and talk to you a little bit. You hear that? That's a big truck full of corn. Okay, so how to be young. If you could know how happy I am that some of you seek worthwhile interests and activities, the kind of things that develop character for life. In fact, if you practice some of the things that I'm suggesting here, you will find that no matter how old you become, no matter what kind of health you are in, whether you're tired, whether you feel energetic, whether you've had some very unhappy events in your life, whether your life's dreams have been thwarted or whether they've been fulfilled, these principles work for everybody. Now, I will try to do one for boys later on. This one's for girls, but maybe they could benefit from some of it. You will find that no matter how old you become, you will not lose interest in them. There are things that will back you up in hard times and be something you can, quote, fall back on. There is so much to do now in your youth that you cannot spare the time to be bored. Now, sometimes a little bit of letting your mind lie fallow, a little bit of boredom is very, very good for you because it lets your mind rest and renews your mind, and you might find yourself more keen. It's like fasting. You might find yourself thinking more keenly after a little bit of relaxation and so-called boredom. Now, I know some people don't want to use that word, and we never used it when our kids were growing up, and they never said, I'm bored. We were afraid to say it when we were growing up because our authoritarian parents would make us work. There was always a stack of wood to be chopped or brought in, and there were piles of dishes and large families to be washed, and there were floors to be swept. And if you had any time at all to relax, you wouldn't say, I am bored, because they would find ways to put you to work. These activities in this list begin in youth. We all need food preparation, good clothing designers, hairdressers. I've talked about hairdressing before instead of hairdressing that's based on products and chemicals. The true hairdressing are the way hair is arranged, and that takes true talent and skill. So we all need good things like this: good story writers, friendship letters, cards, and homemade gifts, good conversation, music and art. I wanted to talk more about conversation to ladies, no matter what your age is, because we are losing the skill of it and the art of it and not understanding the purpose of it. And conversation has turned into agendas and manipulation and just people griping or what am I trying to say? Uh, just criticism and forgotten how to have real friendship type conversation. And some of you who are vital can remember, if you'll just sit back for a minute and recall the old people of your day when you were young and what they talked about. What, our families were not isolated. They had friendships, they visited, they came over for pie. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for a good pie recipe book. There used to be these small books you could get. They were all about one kind of food, and there was a pie book, I remember. So, because they did socialize around pie. So, we need people that know how to write friendship letters, make homemade gifts, have good conversation, music, and art. Such Now that's not to say professional art or famous art, but people that can do it yourself. Such things as leisurely walks, reading, tea time, art, that's your own art, music and letter writing, crafts and sewing, feminine dress, gardening, and more will all pay off in your later years. Now, regarding art, there was a girl I knew when I was growing up who didn't feel she could draw very well, but she enjoyed taking a paintbrush and paper and just doing a little freehand design around the edge of a paper. And so she just kept doing that. She wasn't able to really do the kind of art other people were doing, but she made these freehand designs all around papers from the time she was really young. And when she grew up, of course, then we had printing more available to us, and she printed off her own letter paper. And I think that everyone should be able to enjoy any kind of art, even if it's not like photographic looking or a scenic or anything like that. Just fooling around with color and paper and enjoying it because it's good for your mind. Now, I'd like to take a moment here to say if you feel you have missed out on how to be young and you never really experienced all these things. I know some people have said that they grew up with working mothers who didn't have time to teach them how to make snowflakes out of paper or create paper dolls. These are things you can still do. There's no rules about how old you are. So if you feel you've missed out on anything, or if perchance you've reached a certain age and have not been able to do any of these things that I'm going to be shortly talking about, you don't have to worry because you can begin at any age. And don't feel bad about it. So, I'm going to list the things, and I have talked about this before, that I had when my daughter was younger, and I thought I should list some things that I would like her to at least be exposed to, even if she never did it, even if she never excelled in any of it. At least she could be exposed to it. And so I just kind of kept to this, and you can make your own list, things that you are thinking is important. And if you've had disappointment in your children or grandchildren or your own brothers and sisters, and you wish that one of them had become more like this or been able to be more of a this or that, or had talents or pursued their talents in certain things, and it's been very disappointing to you, then what you can do is be all that you want them to be. Did you wish that they had written a little story? You write a story. Did you wish that they had maybe had their own little business? You start a little business just on your dining room table and just create something. And one thing we did was we made our own money. We just drew it on a piece of paper and cut it out, and we distributed it, and then we had a little shop, and we bought things with with our own money. And just because I wanted them to have the experience. But if you have very big disappointments, maybe the family you grew up in did not encourage any kind of self-development or anything outside of the public schools, you don't have to worry, because you can just become all that you missed out on, or that you feel disappointed in, even with your own kids. So let's see the possibilities here, and I'll read all the list here so you'll know what you're doing. Homemaking, hospitality, tea time, which can be combined. Feminine dress, crafts, and sewing, those two can be combined. Art, music, reading and writing, and correspondence, those all can be combined. Manners and outdoors. I'll cover a few of them while I talk to you today. And I hope you're doing well and that you've got yourself a cup of tea and are happily going about your house, picking up things and at least putting some things in order. I'm going to probably delay the grim job that I have to do, because I have to put that room back together, plus several other rooms in which the mess overflowed into. And while the floor was being put in, but I'm ever grateful to have that floor. And so I'm going to just talk as long as I can, and then I know I have to get to work. So homemaking, let's start with that. And this is for youth, for young girls. And 8 to 18. And if you're older than that and you missed out on this, having had this put into your mind at an early age, it's not too late. You can start. So there's more to homemaking than cleaning house. A lot of people say, I'm not just going to stay home and keep house, because keeping house is just something that's necessary to do so we can do other things. And we all have so many other interests. And I would suggest that you start out with a list, and you start out with a schedule. And if you can possibly follow the clock, 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, I have never been able to manage it, but maybe you could. You could do that too. And also, it's great training for your mind to try to keep up with your own schedule. I have had, and many of you who are vital, like me, have probably had people in your life every now and then. I remember back when I was in my 30s, somebody came to see me. I don't remember how we were connected or anything, and she brought me a schedule to follow. And I said, look, I grew up in the home. I also attended a class called Sidetracked Home Executives that came around in the late 60s, early 70s. And I said, I have here a schedule book, I have a card file, everything, and this is how I manage it. Because she had been to see me and noticed what I was doing, and decided that she knew better, so she was going to help me. And she wasn't even a homemaker, but she had a schedule. But the trouble is with a lot of people is that their way of doing things are based on the office, on how things happen at the office. It's not that way with the home. You have to be very, very flexible. You might have on your list, clean up the living room, put away such and such, go find such and such, repair that chair, wash the window, sweep the floor. But then there are people around, and you have to stop, and you have to get back to your list afterwards. You can't do things the way that you did at the office, and it can't always follow a card file. It's totally different. You have to adjust your mind to adjusting. You have to adjust your mind to adjusting. So you're flexible. That doesn't mean you flex yourself out of the work altogether and say, well, today I just didn't get anything done because this happened and that happened. You can go back to your work in a pleasant and elegant and graceful way and work at it little by little and still adjust to having to stop to help someone or get a meal or anything else. This takes skill, and you're better off if you have grown up around it and you see how your mother and grandmother did it, but many people did not. But it can still be learned. So, there is more to homemaking than cleaning house. It means making the home an appealing place. Now, whether you live in a yurt or a tent or a holiday trailer, you can still make it a pleasant place. And it's preparing food in a nutritious and attractive way, and learning something about how to manage a day of homemaking and housekeeping by yourself, and learning about the care of other people and cleanliness, and most of all, being as pleasant and about it and as kind as you can, and making a list and checking off each item as you accomplish it. It can be a great deal of source of satisfaction. Homemaking is easily learned in youth because your mind is so able to absorb facts, and you're not so fragmented with so many things to think about. If you get vital, you have your mind going in all different directions. So while you're young, learn to be young, because these things that I'm telling you, in order to be young, will pay off. So here comes the part that's the young. Homemaking is easily learned in youth by enjoying the art of playing house. When you enjoy keeping your house as if it were your own playhouse, it brings joy and lightheartedness to what most people dread as dreary. So on your daily list of things to do, be sure to include some aspect of homemaking that's pleasant. Now, I'm going to move on to hospitality and how to be young when you're... Now, being young when you're doing housekeeping, it should be treated as though you are, in a sense, playing or creating a story. And I think that a lot of people won't like me to say that, because they love everyone to be enjoying the drudgery and the reality of it. Remember one of the last homemaking broadcasts I made, where I talked about people who accuse us of escapism. I even watched, I love this cottagecore idea of using your grandmother's doilies and homey things in your home and your life, and natural things, nature, and scenic things and outdoor activities. And I enjoy it so much, but unfortunately ran across too many people that were saying that this could easily be escapism. And if this is escapism, then Christianity is escapism, because it tells you how to live a life within a world that doesn't agree with you. And so I guess we could just be called escapists. So hospitality is also a way of lifting the life for other people and for yourself. There's a great deal of good feedback coming from hospitality too. Now, even if the hospitality did not go well, you at least got your house ready. You're a little ahead now, and maybe you tried out something new and you've learned something. So this hospitality is a place where you can really excel and blossom, for it involves making guests comfortable and happy, and you can practice it on your own family. Always practice it on your family until you feel comfortable. And then when someone comes over, or for some reason you have to show hospitality to someone, you're so used to treating your family that way that it is just second nature to you. You don't have to turn on your company manners, because you've learned how to do it for your family every day. It means setting an attractive table using your best things. Now, these days people don't sit around the table with the table setting in front of them. They feel more comfortable with maybe a buffet style get together where people go help themselves and go and take their plates where they want to sit. It doesn't really matter, but it just means making things as comfortable and as attractive as possible. And it means making sure a guest has an honored place to sit, and that you have a few things planned for them. And my youngest grandson, who's 4 now, and he reminds me he's 4.5. They always know, don't they, how many months that it is till their next birthday. When I visit him, he says, "Do you need a cushion?" He wants to put a cushion by where my chair is, because their chairs are very straight-backed and uncomfortable, and he will always make sure that I have a cushion. He wants to take care of me. And considering hospitality, let's be kind to those who are trying to make us comfortable, and don't decline their invitation to have a cushion. Don't decline their invitation for a glass of water. Just say yes to everything, just to make them happy to serve you. It can get very discouraging sometimes for a young person who's trying to serve you and you don't want it. You don't want anything. Or, excuse me, I'm on a diet sort of thing. If you're going to visit someone and be a nice guest, don't be on a diet that day. One thing that I dislike immensely is preparing everything and then finding out that they brought their own food because they're on a special diet. And I try to ignore it and just make the conversation fun. We can still be happy and we can still be friends. But that is something that was never done, I don't think, until the current times. Never done. No one ever brought their own stuff because they were allergic to something. I don't think there were as many allergies either. Hospitality. So this is a subject, and also that you know how to treat guests. And remember, you can always do it with your family, and that, to me, is the most important practice. Because one day, if you're vital now, your children will be grown, and they'll be coming home, and you'll have to treat them like guests. Hospitality is best accomplished by preparing food from a planned menu, either your own or from a book. Or I highly recommend using Tea Time magazine as a good seasonal menu and recipe plan to help you to become a happy hostess. Maybe you don't like tea or care for it, but the Tea Time magazine is not so much about pouring tea as it is about the food. And the food is just little bite-sized things, hors d'oeuvre type things, and which is a lot less trouble and easier to serve to people. And can also be stored in the fridge. Doesn't have to be hot, and easily made. And one of my granddaughters takes a Tea Time magazine and tries to make everything in one of the menus, and then send me a picture of all this stuff down the long table that she made from the current magazine. I'm amazed. I should probably send that in to Tea Time magazine. So, I highly recommend using Tea Time magazine as a good seasonal menu and recipe plan to help you to become a happy hostess. On your daily list, be sure to extend hospitality to someone in your house each day by helping anyone who is weary or asking, is there anything I can help you with today? Anyone who you think needs a pick-me-up or encouragement or appreciation. So now let's discuss tea time, which also can be, to me, I use tea time as hospitality. It's just the easiest way, in my opinion. It's self-serve. They pick up the food they want themselves, and it doesn't take you don't have to keep anything hot, and you don't have to hover over anything. It's just all out there, and they can enjoy themselves. Being young includes enjoying a fancy tea. Don't you remember a fancy teacup? Don't you remember being little and getting a little tea set to play with? And I don't know what we did with them. I suppose we poured water in them. We didn't know what they were for. There goes another big harvester thingy. So just continue it. Just continue that appreciation of the fancy teacup into your youth. And how to be young, I think, includes a fancy teacup. And I think that after a certain number of years, we should be giving the young ladies a teacup for their birthday or for Christmas, and start them on a collection of it, just because it's so refining, even if they don't use it. And so being young includes enjoying a fancy teacup with a fragrant scent of hot tea. Children love Bengal spice, mothers love their lemon or mint tea, and young girls seem to prefer the strawberry tea. Your grandmother might like her favorite, Yorkshire Gold. Learn how to make tea properly so that it will turn out well. Observe a 2 or 3 o'clock tea time ritual just to establish a routine in your life, and it will set you up for life. You will be collecting beautiful teacups and learning about tea foods. As I stated in the hospitality subject, use Tea Time magazine for a guide. The tea time habit can be taken anywhere, from a car trip to a walk down a country road. It is the thing people are using to slow down their lives these days. So now we'll move to the next subject, feminine dress. When you are young, dressing in clothing that is innocent and light-hearted means happy colors and prints that imitate nature. Now, if you want to go to Pinterest and type in cottagecore dresses, then you'll get the idea. It's these springy ginghams, little prints with, just animated, birds, butterflies, anything like that. I used to go to the nursery section of the fabrics store and pick out these little cotton prints that had little things on that they make for children, and I'd make dresses out of them because my children would be looking at my skirt. They would be so tall, and they would see the print on the skirt, and I thought that was important. There's a way that you refine someone's taste is what they see when they're really young. So if you're very young, I'm teaching you how to be young, then look at young things. Go and get some of these baby prints and make yourself some skirts from them. And be lighthearted and young and not serious and jaded and, finished with life or bored. So, happy colors and prints that imitate nature. It does not mean showing a lot of skin. The purpose of girlish dress is to provide a pretty covering for yourself. Now, even you in your vital years, you need to cover your arms. Unless you are extremely physically fit and you don't have straps hanging out and anything showing, you do need to cover your arms, especially your upper arms. Now, I find myself having to cover my forearms too because they scratch up very easily in the rose bushes and in some of the things that I do. Plus, very crepey looking. But you can fix that too. You go to Dr. Berg on YouTube for any kind of skin problem or health problem. Type in his name, crepey skin, whatever. And there's usually a natural solution, something that you have on hand that you can use. But I would say that just as I'm saying that the dressing young does not mean showing a lot of skin, what the purpose of it is you've got cloth on you, and that's the dressing, that's the dress. But unfortunately, most people in our current culture encourage young girls to be young just by showing a lot of flesh. And I don't think that even the elderly or the vital women ought to be showing quite so much, especially if you're not in shape and it's not attractive. I think you really need to cover it. And as you look at the old photographs from the 1800s on through the 1900s, women, no matter what age, at least covered their arms, especially in the daytime. And so girls throughout history have enjoyed tracing around paper dolls and cutting out their own dress designs to practice the art of designing dresses. Also, visiting fabric stores for pretty prints that seem to have the right mood for a dress design can bring out your creativity. This is where I need the music. And there goes another harvester. I don't know what's in that one. But I can remember, some of you who are vital, can you remember this? Where when your mother or grandmother wanted to make something for you, they'd have an old dress or an old coat or something, or anything that they had, and they would trace around you. They would actually trace around you on the fabric in order to make a dress your size or something your size. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, that's what they did. And then they would simply take the old coat and sew along the line that they traced and then cut away the excess, and there you'd have a coat your size. Yeah, they'd leave the buttons on and everything. Yep, that's what they did. And when we went to school, when we were teenagers, they started getting they actually ruined it for us because they made it so complicated. You had to learn about facings, and you had to learn about zippers and buttonholes and buttons, and it became a very arduous job. And the way they taught it in public school, dressmaking and sewing, was so difficult that some of the girls ended up not ever wanting to sew, and also made it so much not any fun, not enjoyable, not delightful, nothing. And I don't have time to describe how bad it was. But the reason that I went ahead with it is I was so desperate to sew my own clothes and to have some things. That was the way out that I saw that I could do. And also had the example of my mother and grandmother tracing around things. They would trace around an old blouse or an old dress or something and just cut around it. And so I kind of knew what the results would be. But I felt so sorry for the girls that never ever ended up sewing because of the miserable way in which it was taught in the public schools. Now, you might not have thought it was so bad, but when you see some of these young girls doing it their own way without patterns, you realize what they put us through. So, dressing up every day in pretty clothes makes a big difference in the way you feel about all the things that you'll be busy doing that are contained in this list. And learning just a little bit about crafts and sewing can be a great help in creating youthful feminine dress. So now I'm going to go into crafts and sewing. Crafts and sewing. Now, when we were younger, our mothers would order us a craft kit, or you could find it somewhere in some shop. And a craft kit was usually everything you needed, the yarn, the needles, everything, to do one small thing, or a sewing kit that would make something. And you could get it done in the summer. And so getting a craft kit or a sewing kit is a good way to begin your creative time with crafts and sewing. You will be glad you did when the days get busy, because the small projects will be very relaxing. It will be nice to include some little thing that you have made as a gift for someone. And doing one small thing can make you say, at least you tried it. There was something I was going to say about this, the crafts and sewing. We used to be able to order small kits, from catalogs. So even if you are of the vital years and you want to try something, you can do that now. You can just go find something and give it a try. So now let's go to art, music, reading, and writing. Whether you learn on your own or take a class, art can be very fulfilling and an ennobling activity. Be sure to include this in your week. If all you do is get an interesting to you coloring book and some fancy crayons, you will be bringing out the artist in you, and it will give you a pastime in all stages of your life. Music and singing have always been the things that soften tiredness and stress and crown the most perfect days with added loveliness. Experience reading a book outside once at least, on a nice day. Write a story for someone and illustrate it with your own sketching. On a side note, be sure to choose appropriate reading material for yourself that builds up the soul and not things that are worthless. If you can't find good books to read, try writing your own stories. I mentioned some of the so-called classics a long time ago in one of my earliest videos I ever did, my earliest broadcast. And I listed a whole bunch of things that are common to what would have been included in public school if you had literature. And some of the homeschools would include them too, but I found them to be worthless, absolutely worthless. Did not teach. You expect to be improved or inspired by stories and by literature. And this is one of the reasons that I read Wives and Daughters to you. Elizabeth Gaskell was not well known. I never heard of her when I was growing up, and yet she wrote in the 1800s. But the stories were not put in the public schools for some reason when they would have been so helpful. But they were about families, and they were about villages, and they were about ordinary people. But some of the things that I just had questions about them when I started homeschooling. Did I really want my children to be burdened with some of these so-called classics and horrible things, and yet we were told, well, but they're classics and they're literature and you have to know them, which gave us nightmares sometimes. So be sure to choose appropriate reading material that builds the soul and not things that are worthless. So if you can't find anything, just write something for yourself to read. You might be glad if you keep a journal for a little while to remember how you spent your days and the things you learned. Writing your own magazine or newsletter is very rewarding because you are putting your own ideas and thoughts on paper and sharing it with those you love. So now let's move on to correspondence. Now this is included in the writing. Otherwise known as letter writing, this is one of the sweetest activities that forms lifetime friendships. It also helps you understand how to write clearly and be understood, how to be tactful. Anyone know what tact means? How to be kind, and how to enjoy the art of communication. Now, I want to stop here and talk a little bit about tact. I'm not sure if I even... It's the art of not saying something that would hurt somebody's feelings or that would run somebody down. Or you meet someone and maybe they have some kind of a birthmark on their face or something. You don't blurt out, your birthmark looks like the map of, such and such. You don't, these are things that have to be taught in youth, and it's better just to listen. This is the way my children learned, because I didn't really have the subject of tact, but they were quite shy, and they would stick by me. And so when there was adult company, they just sat next to me and listened, and they observed, and no one said things like that. No one, and so they were observant enough to know that the adults did not say things like that to each other. Sometimes you would run into, and those of you in your vital years remember this, sometimes you'd get somebody that would say something really cruel and mean and very pointed to you. That was very, I remember listening to some obnoxious person who was saying, telling another person that he thought they were conceited. And I thought, in all my life, we were never allowed to call someone crazy, conceited, selfish, or never call anyone a liar. I mean, even if they were, we were not allowed to say anything about it. That's their business, and that's between them and God. Now, you can teach your own children not to be that way, but we were not allowed to do anything like that, because we always felt like if you accuse somebody of something, you'll be guilty of it next. You'll be doing it yourself. Just be careful, because whatever you say, pretty soon you might find yourself doing. If you have no one to write to, try writing to your grandmother, your mother, your brothers and sisters, and even dear Dad. They love getting letters put on their desk or table in the home, and will likely take time to write a few words back. Remember to always practice the principle of building one another up and bring out the best in others through correspondence. The next of the list is manners, and this is where you will learn that what things are the most tactful to say, whether in letter writing or in conversation. So, manners. While a good manners book is always nice, you can figure out what is mannerly, which the Bible calls courtesy, by observing what goes on in the home. And of course, the two commands of Jesus: love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And then there's the do unto others as you would have them do to you. That just embodies all those thick manners books. Unfortunately, the way that the current culture thinks is so backwards that if they read something like, do unto others as you would have them do to you, they just might do something really despicable and not even care if someone did it to them. But, so you can figure out what is mannerly by observing what goes on in the home. Learn to sympathize with those who are sad, and learn to find ways to help others. Be careful of other people's possessions and space, and always say please and thank you. I want to interject in there that there were two things that always used to bother me, and still do. I don't like anyone hovering over me. What I mean is, if I get myself a cup of tea and a little snack and I'm sipping, I don't want someone to come and look at that and say, "Oh, what is that you're eating?" and just make me feel self-conscious. It's kind of private. And the other thing I don't like is for them to hover over what I am writing. If I'm writing a letter to someone, or even if I'm reading something, I don't like someone to come in and hover over. I don't think that's very mannerly, and people should mind their own business. We can observe from a distance what people are doing, but most people feel very self-conscious when someone comes in and hovers over them. I also don't like to be hovered over when I'm trying to concentrate on serious shopping, things that are on my list, and I'm also counting up the cost at the same time. And if someone chooses to go with me and they hover and they look at everything and they talk about it, and also don't like other people making comments or hovering over me when I'm trying to look at something and determine what it is, what the cost is, what I like to be concentrated on it. There might be things you don't like for people to hover over you. I don't like people hovering over me when I am preparing food or cooking. That's my business, and I don't want to be watched for some reason. I know that other people don't mind at all. So be careful to be tactful and always say please and thank you. Tact is the practice of not saying things that would hurt someone's feelings or create an angry response. For example, do not speak in a negative way about things that other people value. You don't go in, so young girls, I hope you're listening, you don't go into someone's house and say, "Ooh, look at all the teacups. Shall I hold my pinky in the air?" I mean, that, and you can get a video on that on YouTube where this woman is so smart, and she shows how that comment was created to intimidate people and to put down something that's very refined. No one ever does that, she said. That's never happened. So that's really a dumb remark to make, and it shows your ignorance. So don't speak in a negative way about things other people value. If you're invited to do something with someone else and they seem to think that this going for a walk in the garden is of value and stuff, you don't make flippant remarks about it. When you consider manners, you will find out that while you may let others go first and make others comfortable, most manners come from the words of your mouth and your knowledge of tact. I had something here that, well, we'll cover it when we do the outdoors. Oh, we're going outdoors. So the next one is outdoors. Appreciating the outdoors is essential in the art of being young, which helps you in life's disappointing times. I was drinking a cup of tea the other day. I set it down and I went outside. And as I breathed in the air, I thought about air tea, because it was really a cup of air. It was air tea. Do you remember when you were young? This is a great way to be young. Going outside and running or walking fast or just breathing in the air. And how special and important that is. I had grandsons that had air this and air that. Oh, we're going on an air trip. We're going to talk to our air friends, and we're going to have an air car, and it was all in their imagination, and they would play. You can tell they weren't surrounded by too many toys and things, as they just created them. But I went on an air walk, and I drank air tea this morning. So here's something about the outdoors. Appreciating the outdoors is essential in the art of being young, which helps you in life's disappointing times, too. Now, that's not to say there will be disappointments, but you look at Wives and Daughters, those of you who watched the movie, what a great job they did on the outdoor scenes, because as in reading the book, I see the descriptions, and they followed those descriptions, and Molly outside. going on walks and being outside. And you can tell sometimes she was disappointed, but in general, people used to go for walks when they were lonely or when life was hard, had been hard. That the walks seemed to help throw off some of the mental burden. Make your own flower-picking garden where you can go on leisurely morning walks and hear the birds sing. While outdoors, create your own florist shop and take orders for your family for special get-well bouquets or happy day offerings from your own garden. No garden? Use some plant pots and tend them on your porch or indoors by a window. And I remember one time my children, there was a little old, maybe 4-step ladder in the old barn, and they got it out and set it out in spring, and they got some of the old pottery that was sitting in the barn in old jars, and they put them on the steps of this ladder and filled them up with all the wildflowers and played as though they were doing a florist shop. I might even have a picture of it, but it was such a blessing for me. I mean, I know that they were absorbed in the play, but I enjoyed watching it and seeing that I didn't give them the idea that they created that all by themselves. And so life feels good when you're learning how to be happy and young, learning how to be young. And doing these things will help you later on when you have more serious responsibilities. Now, even if your children are younger than young people and they're still little, you can show them how to play, how important that is. So I'm going to read out of Cottagecore because, and I'm way over time, so hopefully you're sleeping well. Spend time with trees. Now, I was not going to read this. I saw this, someone's hugging a tree. And right away, I was reminded of the smear that the media had put on people who like trees. They called them tree huggers, and they always were promoting the news stories of someone sitting in a tree because they didn't want it cut down. And I thought to myself how prejudiced I had been for so long against people who liked trees, and I'm surrounded by them. I even have a little forest behind me. And I remembered seeing someone many years ago when I went for a walk in a park, getting up close to a tree and just kind of sidling up to a tree. And I remember, growing up near trees, we had the kind of trees that had the cave roots, where you could get in under the roots. Do you remember those? You see them in the fairy tale stories, these trees with roots, and people could get shelter in them. And we really did have those. And there's space, in the roots. And I remember the 60s came along, and there was this big news story called the Tree Huggers. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'll never be that radical, I won't be a tree hugger. But I finally just broke down and read it. And then I looked up what's the health value of a tree. And you need to look that up too, the health value of a tree. What does a tree do for us? And so it gives off oxygen besides many other things. But listen to this, and I'll see if I can find it here, if I've got it on my phone. So this has the same picture, and people used to mock this a lot, but they were onto something in those days. Get in touch with nature literally. As you walk through forest and woodland, reach out to feel the world around you, the texture of leaves, the soft petal of a flower, or perhaps the water or of a stream. Well, even little children will dig in the dirt and they will hold a rock and then they'll feel it and they'll rub the dirt between their fingers and they'll just look at things and they'll observe. And wasn't there someone who wrote a book called Eat Dirt? Particularly soothing are the trees. Even just being in their presence can have a calming effect, but it's been proven that spending a few minutes near a tree can bring you real health benefits too, such as reducing stress and improving your mental well-being by giving you a sense of positivity, confidence, and calm. And it says here, rest your cheek against the bark, close your eyes, and feel your heartbeat slow. Feel the stillness and steadiness of the tree, imagining both its roots anchored in the ground and the branches that reach upward. Soon this feeling of being grounded will help you. Now, if you remember Psalms, I'm trying to think which psalm it is. He shall be like a tree planted by the water, that the leaf doesn't wither and the roots are grounded. I'm trying to think what psalm that was. It's going to bother me because I used to know that by heart. That's because I haven't been homeschooling you enough that I don't know that. But I looked up something about this, and I'm sure people were wanting to tell about it and being smeared because they were called, they were being labeled, called tree huggers, I guess. So, and I don't have it here. I thought I had it pulled up, but I don't. And it was talking about an ingredient that a tree gives off that's very good for you, that helps you relieve stress. So I never thought I would read something like that or talk about it, but trees are often referred to in the Bible, and probably for a good reason. Especially that psalm, he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, whose leaf does not wither. And of course, that's talking about character. If you're well grounded, and I'm trying to read things of character for young people, so they will be well grounded, and you won't be all frazzled and withered by the time you are vital. But I have seen young people that look older than old people because emotionally they're not being fed these wonderful beliefs and ideas about God's wonderful world. As a matter of fact, ladies, thank you to the one who said put the comment there, that they enjoyed listening and hearing about God's wonderful world, because that was my point. And I have a lot more to tell you, but it will just have to wait for another video. I didn't realize that this had gone on so long, and I only did one thing on my notes here, so we won't be able to talk about people, and today we'll have to skip that for another day. But until then, stay close to Christ, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.